This next video you're watching is proudly sponsored by me with a blocked nose. Please enjoy. Movies. You've taken me to the end of the galaxy and into a black hole, the center of the earth, or fold cities in half. You have brought to life past events. You've portrayed and even predicted the future. You spark debate. You make controversy, build friendships, or break people down into tears. Movies really are a stamp in time that should be cherished. For me, the most important thing about movies is that they are an escape from reality, which is why my most cherished genre of movies is the comic book one. Seeing modern-day tech moguls fighting alongside with World War II super soldiers, Norse gods fighting with celestial beings, talking raccoons, vampires, or blue naked bodybuilders. These films, despite being more cookie-cutter than groundbreaking these days, definitely deserve praise, which is why my next film is a special one to me. Not only was it the first graphic novel I read, I have the main character tattooed on my arm. This one is definitely not relevant at all to today's world. V for Vendetta. This film is a wonderful separation from reality with its sophisticated and eloquent protagonist V, whom is inspired by a real person, Guy Fawkes, but doesn't matter, it's fiction. Before looking into detail, let's see the Orwellian jungle of horrors this movie delivers. Don't be scared though, it's only fiction. A virus is released into the public on purpose. My God. Forbidding religious practices? Well, that's just impossible. Strict rules implemented during an outbreak but continued to run after the cure came? Well, that's just not possible. An archaic government that's implemented curfews? Whoa. Crazy ideology-driven government controlling media narrative, suppression of expression and illegalizing protests? I couldn't imagine. Employing immoral bureaucrats to make national decisions? How could they? Militarized streets? Now that's just crazy. Building camps for people? Not on my watch. Wide-range medical distribution of unapproved drugs? Inconceivable. A modern-day government successfully dividing and segregating a group of people based on their own personal beliefs? I never. Even for an author of fiction, what kind of psychopath could come up with such draconian measures to control people? We must feel lucky that we're blessed to not live in a fictitious hellscape like this. This film is really a breath of fresh air. A quick glimpse into the movie, I hear? Let's go. Following the events of a national-wide pandemic of St. Mary's virus, a dictatorial leader has taken power, promising the cure, perfectly explained by in this speech.
And in your panic, you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent.
This information is not given until 3/4 into the film, but paves the way for my observations. Let's go! From the moment this film begins, you get the grueling feeling of the police, called the Fingermen, and for good reason.
Yeah, well, maybe you could look after us before getting back to your uncle. See, my friend here, he's kind of sick, don't you, Willie?
Real sick. Bad case of the blues. You can feel them.
Don't touch me!
And how they use their powers to harass a woman who claims to be heading to her sick uncle's to look after them, after curfew. Clearly, if someone is sick and needs looking after, it is thoughtless to assume that you could simply go over to their house and take care of them. What kind of insane morals does this woman have? Selfish. The masked vigilante V comes along, and like the misogynist he is, he saves the girl in trouble. I might be nuts, but it's just sexist to assume that a 40-kilogram, 5-foot-tall woman can't protect herself against 3 6-foot-tall adult males. But I'll just have to suspend my disbelief for this movie. V then blows up the Old Bailey, which is the criminal court for those who don't know, and in his mind, the court does not represent justice and fairness anymore, which of course we all know, justice is always fair and should not be questioned. We then meet the Illuminati, who are the political party Norsefire, run by the Chancellor Sutler, which in his secret meeting room, they've put together a suicide squad of leaders consisting of the agents, the secret police, the visual surveillance division, the audio surveillance division, the police department, and the propaganda division. Who, in order to make people believe that there is nothing suspicious going on, the explosion at the Old Bailey was a planned demolition. I'm shocked to think of what kind of world the media would be in that they don't give objective news sources. But not V. That crazy conspiracy theorist somehow got this one right, and using the Norse Fire's own broadcasting system, sent out the whole nation on every network admitting that he was the one that blew up the Bailey. It's so confusing as to why someone would want to admit the truth and express his reason and logic and assume people would listen. Using the magic sleight of hand, V sneaks his way past the guards by dressing everyone in the same outfit as him. What a rascal. Evie gets knocked out and V kidnaps her. He says that he knew that she was a target from the police, but he might as well have peed on her because it's so obvious that he thinks that she is his property. V employs her for her talents, and she agrees. This dude tries to get his dude on with Evie and dies. Jumping forward, eventually Evie gets captured and put into solitary confinement, unable to leave the room she's in. Depression building up, unfair, cruel mental torture, so fed up with it she's willing to give her own life. Unthinkable. Some say that solitary confinement, but for the sake of this video, I'll call it isolation, would be a good time for some well-needed R&R. This girl's head is in the wrong place. Why isn't she just making the most of it? Once finding out who her captor is, by the way, it's V, she panics but quickly relaxes. Stockholm Syndrome. Almost as if she bowed down to the one that's kept her in isolation. Under the name of William Rockwood, V meets up with two of the Suicide Squad members explaining how the virus outbreak was actually a planned epidemic set to target 3 distinct locations, as the rising politician Sutler already had the cure, and with it he would promise hope and prosperity. He placed all restrictions for the betterment of the people during the pandemic, but once it had passed and the cure was available, they still did not return to their previous freedoms. Praise to the leaders who are so wise and brave to give cures to people despite knowing no long-term effects, promising freedoms and never returning them. Logic! The Chancellor, with his strict conservative views, banned homosexuality, Muslim beliefs, anti-Norse Fire marketing and art, even fucking butter. Later on, V's meeting with the secret police is by far one of the best standoff scenes in cinema history, and I know the critical drinker feels the same. Being shot by so many bullets I couldn't keep count, being able to push forward and overcome a group of gun-wielding policemen with nothing but blades, hearing his voice in pain, clearly has been wounded, the gunfire had taken its toll, but in his breath so powerfully says,
"Beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy. And ideas are bulletproof."
But, after all, this movie is fiction. Having sent out hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Guy Fawkes masks to the British people, together they march on Parliament House on the 5th of November. The military are holding the line and seeing the approaching heretics and awaiting order to fire. Each wearing the antagonistic uniform, getting closer and closer, marching straight forward, on and through the military, and each of them standing together as Parliament blows up, has to be one of the most wretched things I've ever seen. Let's have a look. No social distancing happening while standing so close together, clustered in like sardines, despite knowing there's a pandemic that they've overcome. Why even bother show the government that they're fed up with being controlled? What kind of people are these? But at least they're wearing masks. Before I finish up, there are just a few things I would like to say. The most important thing about this film is that it is fiction, and it does not represent reality in any way, shape or form. It should not be influencing people to spread the false message and ideologies embedded within the narrative. We should not be standing together. We should not have our own personal beliefs. We should not be asking questions. We should not be encouraged to think for ourselves. What is the important lesson in this is that we should stay home. We should follow orders. We should believe the media. We should judge one another. We should point fingers despite not knowing the circumstances of others. We should never get fed up with the rule makers. We should never stand up to the enforcers. We should eat what we're told, and we should continue blindly. This movie is a good look into what happens to a society under the fair and just rulers who make perfectly rational decisions through a pandemic, and constantly drives a one-sided narrative that threatens those who oppose it. But the biggest message, and I definitely hope this should not affect anyone who listens to this, and I hope it does not stick with any one of you.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
And with that, I'm done. England prevails.
England prevails.